Alright, so the title is, Am I, 30 female, responsible for half the cost of a house mortgage that only my boyfriend, who is 30 male, will be signing? Interesting, right? Alright. So, it says, my boyfriend is planning to purchase a house in a year. He can afford it, I can't. He plans to take advantage of first-time homeowner loans or whatever, and suggested that I don't sign on the mortgage for it so that I may also take advantage of that same first buyer deal in a few years when we're more prepared for a second property. He wants to buy a duplex, live on one side and rent out the other to cover some of the costs. And then later on I buy a place and we move into there and rent out both sides of the duplex to cover more of the costs of both properties. It makes sense in my head, but in my gut I have a weird feeling about it all. He still wants me splitting the mortgage and all of the house bills. I'm, of course, fine with splitting utilities and such like we are now, but shouldn't I just be on the mortgage in that case, if I'm paying towards the mortgage, property taxes, any home fixes, etc.? Or, like, am I going to become like a tenant and required to sign a lease agreement under him? That alone sounds strange because I'm his partner, not his tenant or roommate. I'm not well versed in how all this works, so any advice or words of wisdom for the home buying process? Well, I shouldn't read that hard because we're not either.
Listen, we're well versed in whatever we want to be well versed in.
You're right. It's kind of funny though. But just the whole idea of it. Okay.
Yeah. I have lots of thoughts.
Yeah, because that's a big, yeah. Okay, so what are your thoughts?
Number one, you're not married.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were to get married, because the property's in his name, he could say, oh, I want to sign a prenup because he wants to protect his assets, whatever, and that property is not hers. So I think she should, just because they're living together, they want to make the space theirs together, does not mean the property is hers.
Right.
And I would do everything and anything to protect herself and her assets.
Right.
So if it was me, I understand, like, he's your partner, but as your partner, if the communication is there, they would understand, like, you're just protecting yourself in case of anything.
Right.
And if they were a good partner, they would want you to protect yourselves in case of anything, because even if you do break up or whatever, like, you still love that person, you still don't want any bad to come to that person.
Of course.
So I think a contract should be signed of what's expected. The problem I see with her being like, oh, I shouldn't pay half the mortgage is that as a buyer, you need to put a down payment in.
Yeah.
If she's not putting half the down payment, a tenant or someone who lived there would be paying the mortgage anyways.
Yeah.
So I think she should be paying a portion of the mortgage because it's basically rent.
Yeah.
Like, if she's just paying utilities, I don't think that's fair to him because he's not the only one living in the space.
Right.
So I think she should be paying at least part of the mortgage. I understand that it goes towards paying off the house, but when you have a mortgage, that's basically your rent.
Yeah.
So, like,
exactly.
There's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. I think she should be paying half the utilities and part of the mortgage, whatever they decide together.
Right.
Whether that's 70-30, like 50-50, whatever. But also, I don't feel like it would be that high because if they're buying a duplex, the other person is paying part of the mortgage as well.
Exactly.
And they're not with him. They're not worried about because they're just paying rent. Like, that's how they view it. So she just needs to view it as, like, paying rent and less of, like, this is my partner. Like, I shouldn't be paying the mortgage if it's not under my name.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, so I think she needs a contract. I think she should be paying some of the mortgage, just like view it as rent. Don't view it as a mortgage because that's what it would be if you were leasing somebody's house.
Exactly.
Whatever your rent would be going towards their mortgage.
Right.
Like, I don't think that she should be paying completely for, like, home repairs or anything.
Yeah.
Because tenants don't do that.
Right.
I don't think she should be paying for, like, any home improvement unless they agree to eventually put her name on the mortgage, which I would have in writing too.
Yeah, of course.
I think, especially as women and, like, as time has gone on, you need to protect yourself in every, like, aspect.
Yeah.
And she should let him, like, do this in his name, whatever, and, like, do all the things I said. And then when they buy that second property and it's only in her name, like, that's when she's ready.
Yeah.
She'll be able to take advantage. It doesn't sound like he's a bad guy.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know any, like, his...
Right. But I'm saying, like, someone who would want to, like, take advantage take advantage of her.
Right.
Wouldn't say, like, oh, I'll use this now and, like, we'll buy a house together later. No, he said, like, the next property you get in your name, and, like, you take advantage of that.
Exactly.
So I feel like that doesn't give me a red flag. I think well, obviously she knows him better than anyone. Right. So, like, if you have a gut feeling, definitely protect yourself with whatever contracts you need. Exactly. Maybe get the advice of, like, a lawyer, whatever. But I don't think she should view it as, like, oh, his house is the only one on the mortgage, like, I mean, his name is the only one on the mortgage, like, so I don't want to pay the mortgage, that's rent, like, that's what it is. And then also, like, they could make the space their own together, so I don't really see it, like, being a terrible or, like, a bad thing. I just think protect yourself in all
as much as you can.
Aspects.
Definitely. I mean, to me, when I first read it, because... I don't know. It just depends on how they were living before, or how they're living now, because I guess they're thinking about doing it. In a sense of, like, was she... So, for example, like, a lot of Latinos, a lot of the guys, I mean, I don't really view things like that anymore. I don't really view things like that. Where the man pays for, like, everything house, like the rent, everything, and then you just kind of pay, like, maybe little things, like the groceries, like, really, like, little things, like, you help out there and things like that. So it just depends, like, on how they were living before, like, if they were living together, because if you go from, like, just paying utilities, I guess, like the water and, like, cable, I don't know, like something simple, and then you go on to paying, like, a whole, like, half a mortgage that's not even under your name at all, like, I would feel some type of way too. Okay. Like, in that sense. Like, if you were paying already, like, half the rent beforehand, like, I wouldn't see that much of a big deal, like, paying half. I mean, not half the mortgage, like, if you have, like, if he's making more than you, and she said that she can't afford it, like, then no, you shouldn't be paying half, and he shouldn't be saying for you to pay half. Like, I'll pay 30% of it. Like, you know, whatever, like, however you can pay. But, I don't know, that was just the first thing I thought of is, what was their situation before? Like, was she paying rent if they were living together beforehand? Or was he only paying for it type of thing? Right. You know what I mean?
I mean, to me, a lot of the time, what stops people from, like, being able to buy a house where she's saying she can't afford it, a lot of time it's, like, your credit score, like, how much debt she's in, how much debt she has to pay off, and which I don't think he should be held back from buying a home because of her financial situation. So that's why, like, it doesn't really throw me off that he's buying it in his name. But also, like, the down payment a lot of times can be big, and if she's not able to save as much because maybe he makes more, then she needs more time to save for when it's her own property. Like, that's what it seems like to me, but I understand, like, where you're coming from, that she might feel some type of way if she ends up having to pay more because of a house under his name and something, like, he wants to buy.
But at the same time, if they were together for a while and you're, like, obviously... It's just you never know if they're not married yet. You don't know if you're really going to end up together. But if you pretty much see a future, like, you still want to support your partner. So, like, I wouldn't mind paying a part of the mortgage, but not half. And if you weren't paying it before, like, that's when I would be like, no, because, I don't know, because, I mean, I've had similar discussion once, right, with somebody, and... that, like, just made me feel some type of way, too. Like, it's not fair. Like, you're supposed to move into a place together, and it's going to be under your name, and it just feels, like, it just doesn't feel right. So, I understand that aspect, I guess. But, at the same time, I don't know. That's just the first thing that I thought of was, like, was she paying rent before?
That makes sense.
And if she wasn't, then, yeah, I would feel some type of way.
Yeah.
To pay half. If he says to pay half, like, I don't know. That's too much.
No, that's why I said, like, you have to determine how much, like...
That's the smartest way.
Yeah, like, percentages, whatever. You need to see your income. I think I would do a lot of, like, income-based. I think too many people focus on, like, half of everything. And if someone's making, like, a significant amount more,
No,
then
it won't
it's
be
not
fair.
fair.
It literally isn't fair.
Yeah, so you think 50-50 is fair, but then it actually ends up not being 50-50 because 50-50 of your income is not the same as the other person.
The 70% of your income.
That's not fair.
If you make less and whatever.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
See, we can have our opinions.
Yeah, you're right. You have to be experts.
On the house.